Since 2009, I've started a series of about 4 companies. I've sold 2. The other 2 companies that are still running are Enterprise Lab, which is a company that went international within 5 months of trading and has now socially impacted 35,000 people across the world. We bridge the gap between education, employability and enterprise, and I'll explain what that means later on. And Rockstar Youth, which you just mentioned, which supports the government startup loan scheme, where we help 18 to 30-year-olds get into business, give them up to £10,000 of funding and mentoring to actually get their business off the ground. Since starting on that project, we've now actually started up over 500 businesses, and we've almost lent £3.2 million, and that's since November. I think it's an entrepreneur within someone else's business. That's what it is. And if you want to really drill down on that even further, for me, it's what I call an enterprising employee. For me, the trait of an entrepreneur has to be that you've got to be dynamic in the workforce. You aren't just there to draw a salary. You're not just there to do the job that you've been set out to do. You kind of push the barriers of reason within that job. So whether you're a shelf stacker to I don't know, the director of projects for a multi-million-pound company, whatever you're doing, as an intrapreneur, you always seem to be pushing those boundaries. If you're going to work as an entrepreneur, you need training within the company. You need to be incubated for your ideas. Now, unfortunately, most people who have started their careers and move forward will have sales training given to them, or marketing training, or customer service training, because that's what most companies believe make you a better employee. What do entrepreneurial companies do? They don't train you for selling. They don't train you how to respond to a customer any better. They put you on process management and project management training. How can you create a project to improve our customer service rather than become a better customer service agent? The thing is, entrepreneurship should not be just left to corporations. It needs to drill itself down into SMEs, and now more importantly into small businesses and startups. And there are affordable ways of developing entrepreneurship, because there's so many creative ideas out there that if you do collaborate, you start creating. Now, some of you will think, well, how the hell did this guy who works in electronics, healthcare for 15 years now work with young people? I went through a journey. The first 2 companies I had were consulting on helping businesses start up. The second one, it was an online brand management company for healthcare brands. I sold those 2 companies, and I just happened to do my first talk at a college once after I met someone at a networking event that said, it would be great to tell people that I only went to university for 1 year, studying thermodynamics, passed academically, failed on attendance, and thought, sod it, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm going to just go and work. But eventually, through my journey over the last 2 years, I found something that I fell in love with, and that's working with young people. And that's about creating and becoming a catalyst for opportunity. And because I enjoy what I do, it becomes a natural part of my fabric. I'm not saying I'm an entrepreneur, but every entrepreneur that you work with or you see, there is a natural part of their DNA that's involved in the business that they conduct. Youth Enterprise Life for me was an impact response to what I saw on the TV when the riots were happening. I looked at it and I said, these guys are just screaming out for opportunity. And when I interviewed so many businesses and I said, what opportunities do you really offer? And they said, oh, of course we've got loads. It's just that young people aren't ready to take those opportunities. And I said, well, no, I disagree. If you were to reduce this kind of expectation you have and let young people in to show you how they can be dynamic and how they can be creative, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. That one show over 2 days in London gave away £750,000 in business funding, 3,000 apprenticeships and 300 jobs. So I tell young people now, don't tell me there aren't jobs out there, because I seem to have found them. Don't tell me that there aren't apprenticeship schemes and opportunities out there, because I seem to have found them. And don't tell me there's not funding for businesses. It's not because I'm just one person and I have a great network. I did what not any other entrepreneur will do: engaged passion, showed vision, and great work ethic. So, as I say, I guess I was an entrepreneur. I developed a lot of my skills whilst working for others. I made all my mistakes, the things that everyone talks about. As a great entrepreneur, you need to make mistakes and you need to learn from them. I don't say that. In business, if you want to start a business, you don't start a business to fail so you can learn your mistakes. You design it to succeed and you understand where those mistakes or gaps are. But you take someone like James Khan, who I work closely with. James was not an entrepreneur straight away. He used to work for another company before. He learnt the skills. He became intrapreneurial with someone else. Then he started his business. And experiences don't have to just be resonated around your career. It could be about what you've learnt and felt during your education. That's a career itself. You don't have to tag yourself as an intrapreneur, but believe this, go make a difference in someone else's business. Learn, absorb, develop before you start to think about how your own business will start to look. Because the experience that you can take from there, the network you can build, the support structure that you can put around you will be 10 times better for you when you're actually out starting your own business. And if you are someone that feels very, very passionate about that, you're ready to start a business, let me tell you one thing. Stop thinking about it and start doing it. And that's how you would take the shift from an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur. Thank you.
I joined a company called Huddle 2 years ago, and they were a startup at the time, so they were about 25 people or so. And I joined the marketing team there. And we're now 150 people across four offices. So it's been a huge change in just the two and a half years that I've been there. I was talking to our co-founders, and they sort of got me involved with talking to other entrepreneurs. And so YHP very much was to help people who've got an idea for a business actually then go and start a business. And actually Steve Jobs in 1985 in a Newsweek magazine interview said, the Macintosh team was what is commonly now known as Intrapreneurship. Only a few years before the term was coined, a group of people going into essence back to the garage, but in a large company. And Google have this thing called 20% time. So 20% of your working week can be spent on your own projects. So every week you spend one day, you work on your own project, which is something related to Google, but you can put your creativity into it. And what's great about that is that Google are trying to foster a culture of entrepreneurship as opposed to waiting for it to happen. And they've got such a great talented team, creative people. It was always going to kind of come up with some great ideas. And from that, Gmail came out, Google AdSense, Google News was another one. All of these came from 20% time. So going from an employee to an entrepreneur. How do you do that? Well, you go looking for it, I think. You have to take ownership of projects that come up. You might not have an idea straight away, which is going to be your intrapreneurial idea, and go take it on. But if you're in the organization, you're taking on projects and you're making them happen, then you're building yourself a reputation. So once you do have an idea, you're much more likely to get support of the rest of the team if they know that you're creating, you've created projects before and you've accomplished them. Like, too many companies are just getting stagnant and comfortable with where they are. You've seen like BlackBerry, Nokia before, fall behind the smartphone market because they haven't kept up with the innovations. And they're only just trying to claw that back now. So having these entrepreneurial types, you can kind of see that or go forward and try and find a new area, new market before competition is huge. So as an entrepreneur, I would say go and look and build a strong team. You're lucky enough to have a team which has already been vetted essentially, been hired by your company, and go find the specialists in the role that you need. I don't think you can do it all on your own. It's definitely a team job. And then under-promise and over-deliver. There's no point promising something really high and then not achieving it, but you might still be successful in what you're doing. But people remember the kind of stuff that you promised but didn't quite deliver to. So as long as you promise enough for them to get excited by, and then go and then over-deliver. Just a final note, if you're going to start your own company, hire entrepreneurs. If you're going to work for a company, be an entrepreneur. That's it. Thank you.
So where did my passion for entrepreneurship came from? Well, as I said, when I was 16, I had this incredible opportunity to actually develop my brand into Harrods, into the interior design concession there. This experience the opportunity of going into Harrods came to me through a contact. And I mean, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but it was only because of a certain event and actually it was a theatre, but that's not the point. It was because of that certain event that I went to that I actually got to know a person, and then contacts developed and connections further benefited myself, but it was just because of that. And if you can do that, I promise you, doors will open and you'll be amazed at what can happen. So secondly, the second type of skill set is really about being brave, bold, and courageous. And this refers to my second quote, which is, "Nothing is riskier than not taking risks." And this quote is actually, I actually saw it in the Facebook headquarters in Silicon Valley. So I remember when I was starting up Harrods, my brand in Harrods, one night I actually slept on Harrods' dusty floor, which was an experience in itself, but it was my mentor that really got me through that. And although I was fortunate to have a family-related mentor, I've seen this concept worked in so many different environments. As long as you can create a new connection with someone that you feel will always be there for you, it will be the lifeline and the person that gets you through the hard times. And I suppose the last point in terms of skill sets is networking. It's really about who you know, not what you know. And again, this goes back to my other point of just putting yourself out there, going to events like this, getting involved in societies and trips and anything that you can find, because that's going to be what helps you along the way. But it's about money. And money is a funny topic because entrepreneurs are not driven by profit or money, but it's crucial. But it really depends on the type of business that you're in. So, for example, if you're in the software technology company in Silicon Valley, your company, at least in the short term, is not valued on profit. It's valued on its actual value and its worth. How many employees, how many customers, how many clients does it have? Whereas if you're a consumer, retail-based company, profit is crucial in order to survive. You can't pay your suppliers. If you can't pay your employees, you're gone. So in our KCLBC trip to San Francisco and Silicon Valley, we visited a range of companies from Microsoft, Google, Facebook, to middle ones such as Inkling and Bungle, who've got around $30 to $10 million investment by VCs, and also to the real garage startup of Boombotics, and trust me, it was in an actual garage. But each of them are innovating to fill a niche or a problem. So for example, Facebook wants to connect people around the world in a much better way. Inkling, one of the smaller middle-sized firms, is trying to change the way that people are educated through books. Bungle is actually providing mobile and TV advertisement on mobile phones. And even Boombotics, which is this garage startup, is changing the way that we listen to music by enabling people to bring in their speakers to the shower. But at the end of the day, all of them are changing the way we live. And I think this is something that's such an inspiration to every single entrepreneur and a motivation to start going. If you really feel that you have an idea, trust me, it's probably good, and you'll probably end up the next Mark Zuckerberg. But it's really about being bold, being brave, being determined, going out there and meeting new people, putting yourself out there in new trips, being inspired. A lot of people who came on this trip were on the verge of being actually an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur. And they came up to me afterwards and they were like, this trip has been life-changing, and 100% I'm going to entrepreneurship. So, I mean, that might not be you, but at the end of the day, you need that inspiration and something to really give you that spark to go for. If that's the actual entrepreneurial side of you, then I definitely suggest go for it. Thank you.
BlackBerry, when they were really successful, they were the top of their game, and you're the manager of BlackBerry, what should have happened to instigate more intrapreneurial thinking, activity, and input into the business so they wouldn't have found themselves where they are now?
First of all, it's a great question. From my opinion, what happens with businesses such as BlackBerry is they get a corporate mentality at the top. They say, it's working, we don't need to fix it. We don't need to do anything to it. We continue to do this. And then the climate starts to change rapidly around them. And rather than thinking about how they innovate, they start to think about how they protect. So sometimes the fear of change to innovate sparks this whole fear of, we're not going to do anything, just stay where we are, focus on what we do. And one of the biggest downfalls to BlackBerry at the moment, and something that I've been campaigning to RIM about, is actually they should be taking 100 young entrepreneurs on, giving them the middle of their office and say, you create the next generation of BlackBerry phones, because that's where the creativity will spark from. And you're absolutely right. When you have something that changes physically within the company, the organization, or the market, that's when they start to instill changes and adapt to those situations. What's interesting is those that do already employ entrepreneurial models don't do it for just for the sake of success and protection. They do it as a part of life. They think they can never evolve or continue to create if they don't have new ideas coming. And again, if you look at the careers of people within Google and within 3M and places like Intel, they last a lifetime. They're there. I mean, I've worked with people that have been in 3M for 20 years. And it's kind of like, what are you doing here still? And they go, well, we just move from job to job, doing different things, making differences within the company. So I just think the mentality changes, especially with the top-end SME and whoever's sitting at the top of that tree. If they start to adopt a corporate mentality, you're not going to find entrepreneurship that's going to be fostered.
Agreed, and I think actually it's important to kind of, when you're at that kind of size, to still be hiring in entrepreneurial types, because those entrepreneurial types will hire other entrepreneurial types as well, and that's how you kind of build the culture throughout the company there.
Agreed.
Just to add to that, when we went to, like, for example, Dropbox, Facebook, or Google, I mean, they started up as entrepreneurial companies, and they're still entrepreneurial nowadays. And when we visited them, we were expecting lines and lines of just corporate computers and offices, and we didn't. There were literally scooters around. There was literally a band playing. There was a life-size, picture of the Queen. It was just crazy, because they just want creativity and entrepreneurship and, ingrained within them. So it's the culture that you're in, which is really important.
And it's like Google's 20% time that they have. They've allowed you to then express that creativity and that sort of talent that you've got there.
I mean, it's just, and to add to those points, exactly what was just said there about Google's approach with their office environment and the scooters. It's not about being different, it's about being disruptive, because you can't change anything unless you disrupt something. And that's the nature of entrepreneurship.
Everyone can be an intrapreneur. Do you think everyone should?
From my aspect, I personally think you can be very entrepreneurial and enterprising when you go for a job. Part of what Enterprise Lab do is employability programming, where we get a business challenge from an employer. What's the current challenge that you're facing? And we give that to groups of students to build a campaign. So rather than having a CV which describes your company, your experience, you actually demonstrate your experience. Businesses want to employ people that can take on the role quickly, people can assimilate and add value fast. So why not produce a platform that allows people to actually demonstrate how they'll overcome a business challenge that they have? So in employability, from my sense, if you start to look at being more enterprising in the way that you approach it. I mean, you might have heard the old stories about people sending CVs on pizza boxes and all sorts of different things. That is the measure of an entrepreneur that will go into this company and be disruptive. So it starts right from the beginning for me. If you do the same thing as everyone else, you'll come out with the same result, basically.
So went into depth for a little bit about the different things, and it kind of relayed back to me what I could do in my own workplace or what I could do outside of work as well.
It was inspiring, definitely, because I didn't know the difference between the two, so it was kind of helpful to know the difference between the two, and then kind of let me know where I can sit and where I am sitting at the moment.
I think it was fantastic. It's because you've got different range of speakers, so it was somebody who's really experienced, somebody who is starts at a young age but doesn't have so much experience but still very inspirational, and the person who just casually talks about other stuff, have their own few companies. That's how I figure it out. So yeah.